What's up, fungal associates? Welcome to Completely Arbortrary, the podcast about trees and other related topics. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Alex Crowson. Of course, sitting across from me on the Davenport is Casey Clapp.
Hello.
Casey, why am I speaking in such a way?
Well, Alex, I think it's because you are, as you've described yourself, a Anglophile.
Only when it comes to TV shows. Well, the real reason I'm speaking in this manner, of course, is today we are talking about a British tree.
The English holly.
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Or at
that's
least it's
fair.
in the name.
It is in the name, though I don't believe that this is explicitly a tree that only grows there. I think it actually also grows throughout Europe. Pretty widely, in fact.
Is it? It's native to all those places?
Yeah,
okay.
it is, yeah. So it's over there on the islands, the Emerald Island and the normal colored one, I suppose.
Oz?
Oz mostly. And well, actually, no. I can't say it's actually native to Oz, but there's probably a species native to Oz.
Okay.
But this one is particular to Europe.
Okay.
And it goes all the way down into Italy, goes over into like the eastern Baltics, it goes up in the mountains all through central France and Germany, all that place.
Well, in that regard, let me
Yeah, what's your next accent? Give me a European accent.
I'm gonna mix all of them together.
Yeah, it's just you're just gonna speak American English then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Casey, we got to talk about this English holly.
Yeah, we sure do.
So-called, but we must do so after a quick break. Hey, we'll be right back with Completely Arbortrary.
That's right, everyone. Don't go anywhere.
Wow. Welcome back to Completely Arbortrary. Today we're talking the English holly, if it please ya.
If it does.
Casey, let's imagine as we do every episode, and for the sake of, the bit, I'd like to pretend we're in jolly old London.
I think that's fair.
Maybe we've come across a nice little pocket of South London, a little graveyard, a little cemetery action.
Ooh, okay.
And there are some nice Quercus roburs growing there, and of course, snaking up them like a strangling clutch are the Ilex aquafolia.
Aquafolium. Yes, precisely.
Singular.
This is just the one.
Let's ID the stream.
All right, Alex. This is the most famous holly, I would say. And,
have you heard of Holly Hunter?
Oh,
nice try,
okay,
Casey.
Fine, number two. It's number two.
She played roles in movies. I couldn't think of it.
Very right. Very correct. All right.
So this is the Holly that most people think of when they think of Holly.
This is that one. Not only that, it's the type species for all holly as designated by ye old Linnaeus himself.
Oh, wow.
Now, also, I should note, this is one, and I, as you can attest, have been trying to figure out what happened here. This is one of the very few instances where the taxonomic names don't make any sense to me.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sure that someone has looked into this, and the answer just is not clear, and I have not been able to find it.
Okay.
But it's in the family Aquafoliaceae. You'll notice that's the specific epithet. That is not the genus, where usually the genus is then elevated, so the type genus of a family is elevated to the level of family. So pines, Pinaceae, pines, Pinus, Pinaceae. This is in the family Aquafoliaceae, which is named after the specific epithet of the type species Ilex aquafoliaceae. But that would lead you, Ilex aquafolium.
Wow.
That would lead one to believe, though, that this should in fact be Ilexaceae or Ilisaceae, something like that. But it's not. It's not.
Can we change the subject?
Sorry. All right, yeah. That's fine, Alex. Yes, we can. I just don't understand.
This is one of those perfect, sir, this is a Wendy's moments.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that really is. Like, does anyone actually care here? No? Casey, are you the only one?
Can you say this to me in a different way, my lad?
I can,
I'm sorry.
Alex.
I checked out a bit, as is my want with this kind of stuff.
I don't blame you at all.
Okay.
This is one of the only instances where the specific epithet is the family name.
Epithet.
Yes, that is the second part
of the
of a
binomial
species name. Yes,
okay.
correct. So I don't know why. I think that it comes down to aquafolium is a classical name for holly, which literally means that it is a spiky leaf.
Oh.
So it's like, okay, great. That all works out really well. But why is it not aquafolium ilex? Like Quercus ilex.
I see. Oh, like Pinus comes from Pinaceae, and we always say Pinus blank.
Yeah, correct.
But here, instead, it's not like Ilexaceae, and this is the Ilex aquafolium.
Yes.
This should be from the template for every other one.
Exactly.
Aquafolium ilex.
Yes.
And other hollies should be aquafolium this, aquafolium that.
That's what I think.
Okay.
This is what I think, Alex.
Interesting. One of many of your conspiratory theories.
This is definitely a conspiratory. Yeah, so I just do not understand as to why it is like that. And I cannot find anything that says, hey, here's why.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so anyway.
Just a quirk.
It's just a quirk. And so let's see. There's probably about, I've seen a lot. I'm going to say, this is a nice round number, about 400 species in the family, or in the genus. I think both technically, because there's only one other genus in Aquafoliaceae. Has one species, as far as I know.
Wow.
So there's a bunch of hollies. This is the one that is growing invasive outside of your house right now. That's the best way I can put it.
Okay, great, yeah.
So everyone here in the Pacific Northwest knows it because it is a very popular plant, has been for generations, like going back to Roman times and pre-Romans.
Wow.
This is a tree you certainly recall, Alex. This is the holly king, right?
Yes, of course.
So this is the king that takes over at the summer solstice and starts to gain power until it peaks in the middle of winter at the winter solstice.
That's right.
And it's the holly king, this evergreen, spiky-leafed plant.
Yes.
And so the famous one that everyone knows of grows as a medium-sized tree. Every now and then it'll get like tall and big and like go wild. But for the most part, it doesn't get much more than maybe 60 feet, I think, at the very highest.
That's way higher than I was. I mean, I always see him as like a 20-foot, 15-foot kind of like shrub tree. Casey, I'm more familiar with the holly, I think, as a vine type deal.
Oh, no, you're thinking
mistletoe?
Completely favorite thing. No. You're thinking Hedera helix, the ivy.
Ivy.
Yes, you're thinking English ivy.
How embarrassing.
Wow. Okay, no, this is the tree that grows and is, you know what, Alex, when you said at the very beginning that it was there was a thing crawling up the oak
with a strangling yes.
I had a sneaking suspicion, but anyway, I let it go.
As usual, Alex is confused.
Well, welcome to Completely Arbortrary, everyone. I'm your host, Alex Crowson.
Casey, let's ID the kind of more specific parts of this tree.
Yes, yeah. So it grows up, gets tall, and like I said, 60 feet would be the highest in the world. But usually you'll see it around 30 feet or so. Let's give it a nice, easy 30 feet. And it will have smooth-ass bark. Oh. Nice, gray, very smooth. Tends to have a big stem that has very tiny little, like, just little wispy branches that come out.
Okay.
I don't really understand it, but imagine like a snowman where it's like proportions are really off.
Sure.
The little sticks of its arms really don't match up to the, it's
the bulbous frame.
Yeah, thank you. So that's what I see with this all the time. Like I very rarely see them grow with a big stem that then has large scaffold limbs that then proportionally get smaller and smaller. It's like, here's my stem and here's my little sticks coming off of it. So this also contributes to its form, Alex, where it tends to have that nice single stem and then it doesn't really get really too wide. So it kind of stays like this skinny pyramidal shape most of the time. It doesn't get too broad. Sure. It doesn't look like a nice big deciduous open tree.
Does it look more conifer-esque?
It does. It really does.
Interesting.
And of course,
I did not expect that.
This one is evergreen, Alex.
That's right.
So it adds to it.
Yeah, I love, man, when you imagine going out in the snowy forest and all the trees are dead. Not dead, they're sleeping. Take a little nap. But then you got these holly and the bright red berries.
Oh, jeez.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Yeah, honestly, Alex, what you see that looks beautiful and lovely, I look at and see destruction.
Yeah.
We
can talk about
that.
that.
We'll talk about it.
Let's talk leaves, Case.
Let's get to those leaves you're talking about.
Yeah.
You see. So these are the quintessential leathery, waxy, evergreen leaf.
Shiny.
It's very shiny, hard. Like if you bend it, it'll kind of snap in half most of the time. If it even breaks at all, a lot of times you can bend it and it'll just snap right back to its normal shape.
Wow.
They are really tough plants. They're tough leaves. And the reason for this, as for any evergreen plant, is that it puts a lot more effort into each individual leaf and it keeps it around. So it has to have a waxy coating to make sure it doesn't lose water during the wintertime.
Oh, okay.
That's the big reason. It all comes down to water.
It kind of seals itself up.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Then you have to have it has really sharp spines on it most of the time. It's another famous thing about holly. It's very pokey.
Yeah.
And that is actually, they are just the ends of kind of serrated tips on the edge of the leaf. And the leaf is very wavy. So like the edge of the leaf will wave up and then end with a long pointed serrated tip, and then it will wave back down and come back up, and it'll just kind of have this this wavy bit on the side of the leaf.
And this is all in effort of protecting the leaves and the fruit, I guess, right?
Yes, yeah. So this is called undulating edges. Yeah.
Undulating edges.
Exactly. It's beautiful. It's like it's like looking at a bunch of rolling hills, but with each one a spike is right on the tip.
With the head of a trader on it.
Oh, obviously, yeah. So
we're in Scotland.
We're certainly in Scotland now. Yeah, maybe we can just move around and then we can find different spaces that fit the metaphor of the moment. Yeah,
yeah, of course.
But they're so sharp. They hurt a lot.
Even I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, bad.
It is uncomfortable. They are super sharp. And that is what they look like when they are juvenile leaves.
Oh.
Now, you remember when we've talked about junipers, right? Mm-hmm. So junipers are famous for having two different kinds of leaves. The scale-like leaves of the adult leaves, quote unquote, which is just more stems that have grown for a while and are putting on kind of secondary new growth coming off. Sure. It's not the very first twigs that are coming out, the very first leaves on a twig. When they are attacked, those scale-like leaves turn to really sharp awl-like leaves on the juniper.
Awl meaning awl is like the garden tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a spiky hoe sort of thing.
Exactly. Spiky hoe, or there's a hand tool that's an awl that's kind of like flattened, and then it comes to a point so you can like dig into wood or something.
Or like make a hole for a little plant.
Yes, exactly.
Like a flower.
So this is what junipers do.
Oh, sorry. An awl is like a spike.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
I was thinking of a spade.
Oh, yes, not a spade.
My bad.
No. Man, yeah, you're getting wires crossed today, Alex. This is going to be a good one. Don't worry.
All this blasted coffee I've been
drinking.
It
is, yeah. You're thinking 3 steps ahead.
Yeah. I'm playing 5D chess on this episode.
Oh, my God. He's playing chess through time and space.
All right, let's do our Q&A right now.
Alex, no. So just like that, holly has juvenile and adult leaves.
Sick.
The adult leaves have no spines, and they are smooth, and they don't really undulate.
See, this is like my dad will always say, "I'm too old to get mad about things, or I'm too old to, you know." I think once you get a little older, you realize that the anger of your youth maybe served you then, but it doesn't serve you now.
Yeah,
I feel like the trees are the same way.
I adore that. That's exactly right. It gets old. It gets comfortable with itself. It knows what it likes. It knows what it doesn't like, and also it doesn't really get accosted by bullies as much.
Yeah, or deer.
Exactly. There's a bully right there. Get it.
Deer are bullies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The one difference is the holly as well as the juniper. They don't forget old grudges. So if a bully does come back up and give it the business, the holly will give it the business right back, and the next leaves that it puts out will be like, bing!
Some of that old bite.
Yeah, exactly.
That old dog can still bite. Well, Casey, all these leaves, they're protecting this sweet little berry.
They kind of are.
Is it a berry?
Well, it is a berry. Yeah, technically. Okay. I think that they would call it a drupe, but it is kind of it's one of those that doesn't quite have a good definition. And I was looking into this while writing my tree ID book, and like There are different parts of a seed, as we've talked about, and depending on the part of the seed that becomes fleshy, or if it's the part of the ovary that around it that becomes fleshy, it becomes a different thing. So in this case, it has never been clear to me exactly what it is. For the longest time, I called them pomes, and I still might hold that they are pomes.
Okay, I can see that.
But this is also like, they're kind of poem-like, they're kind of berry-like, they're kind of like a drupe, but there's multiple seeds inside, so I don't think they could be a technical drupe.
I would say they're more poem than berry.
Yeah.
I mean, they look like a berry in a cartoon sense. Like they're a little red thing.
Little red. They're perfectly round.
Yeah.
They're these little berries that you could look at. They're definitely lowercase b berries. Like everyone would look at this and say, that's a berry.
But they almost look like little tiny pomegranates or something, which makes me think that they're pomes.
I do not have a very good answer for this. So
of course, when I Googled hollyberry to get a close look, of course, a bunch of photos of Halle Berry popped up, and I said, this does not look like what I'm trying to find.
This is like a really hot plant. My God. Like in a 90s hot kind of way. You know what I mean? Early 2000s.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's really curious. I don't have a super good a good answer for it.
Okay.
But I have looked into it, and I've decided to just call them berries because botanically, I think that's the most accurate description.
Okay.
Where the outside is a red and thin skin, and inside there is flesh around multiple seeds.
Sure.
That's what I'm going to go with.
Okay. Berry.
Done. Meanwhile,
this is the Occam's razor of this fruit. It really is a berry.
We're just going to call it a berry.
Yeah. Okay.
This is how it's going to be.
Fair enough.
So the thing is, though, this is a dioecious plant.
That means two houses.
It does mean two houses.
Which, of course, means mommy and daddy got separated, and daddy went to live in an apartment. So they live in different houses now.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Is that right? Two in the same...
No, you got it right.
Okay, so my mnemonic device worked.
You did it, yeah.
Two houses means there are female plants and there are male plants.
Yes, that are separate.
I actually know this because we did a bonus episode for our Completely Arbitrary Treemium.
Yes.
Go subscribe at arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Thank you. Welcome back. And we read a folk tale about a vixen and a holly. And they were both, a vixen is a female fox, and the holly in the story was a female holly.
Yeah, which means it had the red berries.
Yes.
Versus the male does not produce any berries at all.
Okay.
It's got nothing.
Does it produce any sort of pollen part?
Specifically so, that's it. Only the pollen-producing stamens.
What is it?
That's the stamen.
The flower?
It's a flower.
In a flower? Okay.
Yes, yeah. So it has unisexual flowers on different trees.
I gotcha. Okay.
So one quick rundown to make sure everyone's got this right. You have
You're saying mine was confusing?
No. You just didn't get all the parts. Yeah, you did great, Alex. I don't even need to say it again.
I'm saying it was confusing.
Oh, no, Alex. I'm saying it wasn't.
Well, we're fighting now.
We're fighting now. Yeah, okay, done.
We're dioecious now.
We're dioecious now. Get out of my house.
Wait, this is my apartment.
Get out of my house, Alex.
All right, give us the rundown, Case.
All right. Yes, okay, so Alex, we have monoecious, where you have two different kinds of unisexual flowers on one tree.
Okay.
So it could be some are high up, some are low down. They could be right next to each other, or just like offset along a twig or something like that. So famously in the Betulaceae, the birch family, you have catkins that come out and produce pollen.
Yep.
And then at the ends of most of those, you have a different kind of catkin that receives the pollen, has the ovules on it, and then creates these funny little, sometimes like the alder cones, that kind of thing.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So that is monoecious, two different unisexual flowers on one tree. Then there's dioecious, as you so very well explained.
Thank you.
That has two different trees. One produces only the pollen-producing flowers.
Yep.
One produces only flowers that have the ovules inside of it, and that has the ovary, and that produces the fruit.
Yes.
So one pollen, one fruit.
So that's when we talk about a female tree or a male tree.
Precisely.
This is what we're talking about.
Exactly.
A dioecious tree.
And then there are the hermaphroditic or perfect flowers.
Yes, magnolia.
Exactly. Those have all the parts inside one flower.
So smart.
Yeah, so everything is right there. It's all taken care of, and it has, most of the time, different things turn on at different times inside that. So like you would be producing pollen, but not receptive to pollen. And then when you're not producing pollen, you'll be receptive to pollen. Magnolias do this in spades.
It's like someone who loves to go, works at an office during the day in a suit and tie, gets home, puts on their drag, and goes out and has a good time.
Yeah, it's like you just turn yourself on, you turn yourself off, turn yourself on, turn yourself off, whatever you need.
Hey, don't I know it? So, Casey, I have a quick question about, unless you're not done. Casey, I have a quick question about these perfect flowers.
Yeah.
And I do mean quick.
Okay, yeah.
In the sense that I'd like a quick answer as well.
Yeah, I understand. This is a leading question, but like, Casey, I have a quick question which requires a quick answer.
Do you agree, yes or no? So our perfect flowered trees, these hermaphroditic trees, generally kind of like more older species in the timeline here?
Yes.
Cool. Thanks.
Dismissed.
Oh my God.
I felt like I was on trial there. Do you or do you not believe that this is the case? The answer to that is yes, Alex.
Okay.
And then guess what happened?
The Big Bang.
It wasn't actually.
It was a little later than that.
It happened a little bit after that.
The dinosaur meteor.
No, you actually, you're spot on with everything we're talking about, where sooner or later, at some point, this other thing evolved, which is called dioeciousness.
Oh, wow.
Dioeciousness, essentially.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
So that's a great question.
Cool.
It is older. It's the kind of OG way that plants started to grow.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with magnolias that makes them such ancient plants, and then a few other plants along with them, is that their central kind of stem area inside their flower that has the piston, the stem, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
it looks like the Matrix battery.
Yes. Yeah. It's like this spiral thing up. Yeah. So that is very precisely what makes magnolias unique, because it's all spiraled right there.
Ah.
They spiral up, and that's where all of their ovules are, and that's what becomes the fruit later. So that then evolved to be all world. And that means W, and that is spelled W-O-R-L-E-D.
Okay, no
or
H.
W-H, sorry, excuse me. W-H-O-R-L-E-D. World. Yes, so world is the term where everything or multiple parts come from one node or one spot. So they're not spirally arranged. It's not a very tight spiral, so it looks like it's not a spiral. It is, you have point, and then multiple things come from it. So in a flower, to help this, help you kind of understand.
Thank you.
You have one layer that is the sepals, that outer bit that is like usually the buds covering the flower. Those are the sepals, and that together is called the calyx. That arises from one point. All of them come from one spot.
Like at the base of the flower.
Correct.
There.
Okay. Yeah. So
the receptacle?
Yes, they're all connected right there. They're the first thing that the receptacle kind of you see after you go up to the receptacle.
Cool.
Receptacle, then you got those sepals, then inside are the petals. Then you have the male parts usually, then you have the female parts in the middle.
I'm imagining the pages of a book, Casey, all converge at the binding.
Yes, I think that's fair. So take that binding, put it on the table, and then let that book splay open.
Yeah, like the book emoji.
Exactly. They're all coming from that one perfect spot.
Yes.
So that is exactly the evolution of that. So
that's world.
Yes, you have the spiraled, then it all became world. Then from world, you had this proliferation of different ways to do this. And the angiosperms, thank you, have done a fabulous job about coming up with a trillion different ways to orient all these different parts and pieces.
The flowering trees.
Exactly. The flowering trees, the flowering plants. Literally, there are, let me just check my notes here, 261,750 different angiosperm species.
Compare that to conifers, where there's like 16,000.
No, there's like 600.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's
I know
like
there's
none.
a 6. Wow, damn.
Yeah, so they are
very prolific.
They're prolific as heck, and there is just nothing but diversity in their ranks in terms of like how they've gone about this. And one thing that happened is they created a new sexual system that is different. And it's very strange to kind of compare to other things, where almost every animal has predominantly two sexes, where you have like the one that produces this kind of gamete and one that produces this kind of gamete.
Sure.
You have eggs and sperm.
Yeah.
That is produced on two different unrelated entities.
So animals are dioecious.
Animals are dioecious, for lack of a better term. Yeah.
So at some point, we split to this new idea, this new sexual system of, hey, what if we divvy these duties up?
Plants started this, exactly.
Okay.
So it's humans have done this, and you can read through what is it? The Vital Question, another book I've been talking about recently by Nick Lane, talks about this a little bit, like why two different sexes evolved. So Alex, here's the thing: they developed plants.
Yes.
They developed this other way of doing it because plants, most of them, and when I say most, I mean approximately 94%.
Wow.
Are all monoecious or have perfect flowers or complete flowers, one way or the other.
Currently?
Yeah, this is current.
Wow.
Only 6% of angiosperms are dioecious. It's about 15,600.
How about that?
Plants.
So it's a relatively new system?
Yeah. That's the idea. They think it's relatively new.
Wow.
And not only is it relatively new, it's also like relatively new. It's like,
a few million
65 million years ago. Yeah. They like Holly specifically evolved in like the Cretaceous. And they found evidence of their very obvious pollen down in New Zealand for like, millions and millions and millions of years ago.
But that is relatively new.
It is relatively
a few
new.
Minutes ago.
Exactly, because the angiosperms, they came out, like 300 million years ago? More than that? I can't remember. We talked about this last week.
like they're a video game.
Yeah.
When did that come out?
I think it was like circa 400 million BC. So it's kind of one of those new age ideas that I think is just now, it's kind of catching on.
It's groovy, yeah.
And the real question is like, well, why did that happen?
Yeah, that was my next big question.
It's a really good question.
Why is this necessary? And I can think of a couple reasons.
Okay, yeah. What do you think?
Throw these across your plate?
Yeah, like spaghetti. Let's see if they stick to this wall.
Nice. So here's my theory.
Yeah.
Is that there was maybe some like mutation going on from self-fertilization because the parts were too close.
Okay, yeah.
Is that
great.
Possible?
Yeah, okay, I like that. I think that sounds reasonable.
They were like, they got together and we were like, hey, we keep fucking ourselves here. Let's
good.
Let's put you over on that plant. I'll be over here. And then if I need to send over some I'll just wait for a nice big gust of wind.
You better beep that out. That's vulgar. Kids listen to this probably.
All right.
I think that is actually a fine way to describe it.
Hardiness.
Good enough.
Maybe.
Yeah. It is essentially, if I could translate what you just noted,
sure,
a means of avoiding inbreeding.
Yeah, there you go.
Self-pollinization.
Yes.
Yeah, which is pretty much exactly what you said.
That's why the Targaryens moved to Westeros.
Yeah, they were having too much fun on those Dragon Isles up there. The Doom was actually kind of like one of those things people were stoked about.
Sure.
Yeah. I think you're pretty much right
no,
here.
we're snowed in. What are we gonna do?
Gosh. Uh-oh.
Gruesome. Okay.
All right. So let's get back on track here.
Thanks.
Although I have to say, this, and I'm thinking next week's tree, I think I already know what I'm going to choose.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be a lot of sex.
Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be weird plant sex.
I love those episodes.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Everybody else does too. People went nuts over the Coco de Mer.
Yeah, I mean, it was also rated 10 out of 10 by yours truly. So that's sensational to say the least.
That's true.
All right. So here's the thing. This happened probably one of two different ways, but this is all theoretical. No one's quite sure.
Okay.
But the first is called gynodioeciousness.
Wow.
Or, depending on how you pronounce it, gynodioeciousness.
Now I hear gyno.
Yeah.
I think gynecologist.
Yes.
Okay.
And that
Which is like reproductive health.
It's precisely exactly that, because it's the females and hermaphroditic individuals are produced for whatever reason.
Okay.
So essentially, there's a mutation that causes male sterility. So there's a plant over there, and that only produces very active and like non-sterile female parts.
Okay.
Though the male parts still might be there, they just won't be doing anything, or for whatever reason they didn't develop. So there's just some weird mutation that only makes plants that have the female parts, and then plants that have both, the hermaphroditic plants.
Okay, so it's not like a new plant came along that only had the female parts.
Yes.
It was like one of these monoecious plants, the male parts didn't work.
Exactly.
So it was effectively a female plant.
Precisely.
Got
yes.
it.
So, there's a lot of different ways you could kind of, make that work one way or another. But essentially, you have it perfectly right.
Cool.
So then there could be this other one where you had this monoecious intermediate, which is when essentially you have a single individual that carries separate female and male flowers, and then slowly but surely they end up kind of losing one of those. So it kind of goes from all of my flowers have both parts to some of my flowers have one, some have another, to I only produce these kinds of flowers.
Okay.
So it just kind of,
phased out over time.
Exactly. Slowly but surely. So no one's quite sure, and there's a couple other different ways that this could have happened where one is that the male and female parts, the pistil and stamen, kind of become different. God dang it. The pistil and stamen kind of become different sizes for whatever reason. And like, this could happen if you want specifically to get more pollen on an insect. And so the insects go to those more often because there's more pollen. And then maybe the plant like pulls one back, but this is all like evolutionary pressure does it. So it's really hard to describe how the plants are doing this and why, because it's what is successful at that time for that particular purpose.
Interesting. It's almost like, it's almost like narrowing your focus. Like we could do both these things, but we've been successful doing this one thing. Let's do this really good.
Yeah, exactly. And then over time, you just stop doing the other thing altogether.
Yeah.
So that could be another way. But there's, these are all theories.
That's really interesting.
So it's like, okay, cool. So the main reason that, of course, this would have happened is because you're trying to reduce the inbreeding, like what you said.
Yeah.
So, of course, inbreeding is bad because it starts to build up mutations and also recessive genes.
Sure.
So you have X amount of recessive genes. This is the classic Mendel squares and Punnett squares and things from like high school. Yeah, you remember that?
Oh my God, I want to throw up.
I know, yeah. It's not fun, but the easiest way to do it is you have these 4 squares, and on the top left is both of the capital letters, and then on the top right and the bottom left, one capital letter and one lowercase letter, and the bottom right is 2 lowercase letters. Lowercase recessive genes and uppercase dominant genes.
Yes.
If there are dominant genes, then they are the ones that will essentially get, used. They'll be the dominant things. You'll see them. They will be active.
Yeah.
They will override the recessive gene. But in that bottom corner, those are double recessive. So one of those is going to take precedent.
Okay.
Which one? I guess I don't really know, but those are both usually not as good as the dominant ones because the dominant ones have been selected over millions of years to be the better genes.
Like red hair.
Yeah. And like other weird things like that. Like what is the hitchhiker's thumb? I'm sorry. Okay. Well, you really set me up for that.
You didn't slow down enough to understand what I was saying.
It's because I was excited, Alex.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about all the other like genes that like, well, that's technically a recessive trait. Like, yeah, it's weird.
Does Casey Clapp hate redheads?
Oh my gosh, is this going to be all over Twitter tomorrow? Shit. Anyway, it is a weird genetic thing is what I'm referring to.
Yes, yeah.
If you have one of these, it does not make you weird.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Man, do you ever put your foot right in your mouth, Alex?
Well, I kind of put your foot in your mouth.
Yeah, this is getting weird over here, man. Cool.
Speaking of weird sex.
Speaking of weird sex, put my feet in my mouth. I'm just going to lay here prone.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so long story short, this has happened multiple times in multiple different lineages. Our tree, the holly, has done it in spades, and it's one of the most like obvious examples because it either has these bright red, like really flashy berries, or nothing at all.
Yeah,
just
but it's
perfectly green.
The flowers, though, right?
Still has flowers.
Okay, we didn't really talk about those flowers.
No, we're going to talk about them here in a second because it kind of comes up here in the next little bit.
Sorry to break the flow.
Oh, that's okay. You're doing great, Alex. This is I like the flow.
Thanks.
I'm feeling good. Feeling loose.
Oh, good.
So, like I said, this has happened multiple different times, but it's not necessarily common. It's happened in 40% of the genre. So it's like widespread.
It's dioeciousness.
Dioeciousness,
Okay.
yeah. It's widespread, but it's very, very minimal.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, someone over there is dioecious, but the rest of us aren't.
Yeah, but 500 miles that way, another person's dioecious.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So this is super uncommon, but we know it happens all the time, and we know it pops up randomly somewhat through all these different kinds of lineages. So there's got to be something that's like evolutionarily saying, this is a good thing.
Like
this is
triggering
working.
them or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just as likely, and people are really looking into this, kind of a scientific debate right now about if it is an evolutionary dead end.
A dioeciousness?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which right now there are people saying, yeah, this is, they're going to live for a long time, but at some point, dioecious plants are going to evolve themselves out of existence.
Wow.
And
almost like a culture thing where it's like eventually there will only be female plants and they won't be able to reproduce and they'll all die.
Kind of, yes.
Okay.
It's like that's on the level
Wow.
for sure.
Interesting.
So it's this weird idea, Alex, that is called the Bateman principle or Bateman's principle.
Bateman's principle.
Yeah. And essentially, it is this idea that in evolutionary terms, you will go extinct if your male has to use too much energy for its success.
Oh.
So it's kind of this idea, and we don't really have a lot of time to get into it. It's pretty complicated, and there's also like some questions and some critiques of it. So we're just going to focus on the idea that is kind of only about our trees that we're talking about here.
Okay.
But the idea is that you are a male plant, I'm a female plant. I have to put in all of the effort in raising our baby fruit. You do literally nothing.
Sure.
We see this with all sorts of animals. It's in our culture right now. Women bear all the burden for having children.
Yeah.
Whereas men don't.
Yeah.
And men can produce millions of sperm and women produce much fewer eggs. So there is this weird amount of like, well, what are the individual pressures? The male of, say, humans can have as much sex as they want, and their evolutionary success is finding as many different females as possible. Whereas a female's evolutionary success is making sure that that egg inside of her turns into a viable offspring.
Okay.
So there's these different pressures, and in plants, this works with a flower. If you're a dioecious plant, the male flower is producing the pollen, which is often what animals will use to eat. So bees are a great example. They will drink the nectar, but they'll collect the pollen, and that's what they feed to their others. So this happens all the time, and you end up getting this certain pressure on the males where they start to make really big flowers to draw more pollinators. Because pollinators are like, oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to go over there, and I am going to pollinate that flower.
Okay.
But then it stops going to the females because the females do not have the same selective pressure to get insects to come to them.
So the insects are only focused on male plants.
Exactly.
And not doing the whole pollination.
They're not
thing.
doing the whole pollination sequence
Yeah.
here. So in time, the flashier the male gets, the more likely that whole genus or that whole species will die.
But the male just wants
extinct.
to be successful as a single thing.
Yeah, exactly.
As a specimen, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
he's just going to grow as big of beautiful a flower as possible.
Potentially.
Not knowing that it's killing his species.
Exactly.
Wow.
So there's a whole fun little article on this that's called When Looks Can Kill.
Oh my God.
The evolution of
a good
sexual
name.
dimorphic floral display and the extinction of dioecious plants.
Good. That's great.
Yeah, so they kind of talk about this a lot, and they talk about this principle, and it's really a fascinating kind of look at it, and it explains why most of the plants, including holly, have very small, inconspicuous, uninteresting flowers. Now, you can find these flowers, and you can look at them very closely. They're 4 petals, they're very small, and they're white, and the males have these, little stamen that are coming out, and they have a little pollen on the end. The female has a big green pistil right in the middle, and that's it.
Wow.
Except for, they both have these petals, but they don't have any other thing going for them, so they have to kind of smell nice to get things to come to them.
Yeah.
But they don't provide any pollen, so it's not really interesting to pollen collecting insects, and they are successful. But if the male starts to get any more flashy, then it could start leading towards this extinction in a really ironic way.
Totally. It's too much of a good thing.
It's too much of a good thing. It's just kind of weird. There's also this other idea that if the female is the only one responsible for dispersal, then that will end up creating smaller populations over time, because if the female if only essentially half the population is doing all the work to distribute all of the seeds, then it's going to get half as far. It's not going to go quite the longer distance because the female is here in, this point, and it can only disperse it so far.
Sure.
The male that's over there is doing no dispersal at all, whereas if you have like an oak tree where they're both doing it at the same time, then the population get way larger.
Sure, yeah.
So there's a lot of different science that comes into this that is worth taking a look at and reading, because there's all these like backwards correlations that say, well, if this goes up like this, then that goes down over here, and if the size of the flower is bigger like this, then there's less pollen or there's more pollen, and it's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, but they've found a couple different things that all dioecious plants tend to have in common, where they have fleshy fruits, so that the dispersal is taken care of by animals. So the females, they don't have to deal with it.
Interesting.
The animals are the ones that are taking them all over the places. It doesn't depend on that one individual to get it as far as it can.
So they have to make their fruit extra wet and gushy.
Wet and gushy, like a red berry in the middle of wintertime. And then they're also usually wind pollinated.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That way the insects don't always have to go to both plants. The wind will take care of it.
Wow.
That also presents another issue, though, because if you're too far away, your male is too far away from your female, then you can't really do it. The Sahara cypress has the best example of that.
Because the insect is going to take it further, ultimately, than wind could?
Potentially, but also more directly.
Sure.
Where wind is just
that's
hopeful.
like a honing right in on it.
Exactly.
Wind is just like, hope it gets there.
Exactly. Wind has no agenda.
Yeah.
It is not on your time.
It's like throwing an important package into the ocean and hopes that it gets to your
hoping.
destination in Japan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And inevitably, it's just going to go to California. But they also have inconspicuous flowers, inconspicuous flowers. And that's because they're better off if their flowers are both just fine. And they don't start getting, one doesn't start getting really wild and insane and starting to essentially draw all of the females or all the pollinators away from the females.
That is true. They are very just like, oh, that's a flower.
Yeah, exactly. And
they forgot to edit the template is what it is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah, so it's kind of this interesting idea about how these all things work, and it really makes me wonder, Alex, about like how this keeps happening and why we're still wondering, like, is it good? Is it bad? Like, does this actually work?
Yeah.
And we're finding it does. It does work. We obviously have, 14,000 species that continually do this.
That's a success, I would say, right?
Yeah. Sorry, 15,000, excuse me.
Thank you.
It is, yeah. It's a success, but we also, it's such a small proportion, and it's happened so many times.
Yeah.
You can kind of expect that it's probably happened many times and just failed.
Sure.
Or whatever plant had that mutation just didn't continue to succeed and then just went extinct.
I always think that about like religions. Like, how many religions have they have been tried to start that just like fell into obscurity and now are erased from history?
No one's followed. We never paid attention.
Yeah. So maybe there are many different sexual styles that just weren't successful, and then they just died out.
Yeah. And so I'm very curious about this, and I've been wanting to look into it for a long time about like what exactly like the evolutionary mechanisms are so complicated with plants, because you have dispersal on one side, you have pollination on the other side, you have the spacing apart of these plants. And so we can say there's a demonstrable good benefit.
Totally.
You cannot breed yourself. You cannot self-pollinate, which, if you remember our Sahara cypress, this is actually kind of a good thing in certain situations where if you self-pollinate or you clone yourself, then you're like, I am doing really well. Everything I'm doing right now is working perfectly, but it doesn't allow for adaptation over the long term. So if everything is very stable, then that's an okay thing. But if you need to adapt to a changing environment, it's not good.
But if you just need to make numbers.
Yes, just got to make numbers,
Yep.
yeah. So there's also this whole idea about self-pollination as like a good thing for invasive species, because you move one individual to a new spot and it can self-pollinate, grow new plants that are, fine, and then over time build up its genetic variability.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a whole other story.
Wow, Case, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm really torn, and science, Alex, is going back and forth on this.
I think that probably, like most things, eventually there will be a new hotness. We'll go through a couple 100 million years of dioeciousness, and then some little mutation will be like hot as fuck and like really take off.
And everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, I'm doing that."
Yes,
for sure.
Well, that was our horny discussion of the English holly. But hey, we got to give a rating to this tree, and we're going to do so after a break. We'll be right back. Completely Arbortrary. Welcome back to Completely Arbortrary. That was our discussion of the English holly. Casey, it's time to review this tree.
Alex, I'm so ready for this.
Here we go. And here's how it works. We're going to give some final thoughts on this tree and then give it a rating of 0 to 10 golden cones of honor. As our resident expert will begin avec toi.
Great. Thank you. I am very happy to be here, Alex. We didn't get to talk about a whole section of this tree, which is its use everywhere all the time for a bunch of things.
Oh, sure.
I'll give you a quick rundown. It'll take me exactly one sentence. This tree was planted as an orchard tree for cuttings for the holidays. Everyone loves holly during the holidays.
Yeah.
So we have entire orchards of it, and it's extraordinarily invasive here in the Pacific Northwest, as well as a couple other places. So people would plant it, birds would eat it, it would poop them out, and then there you go. You got now a new plant growing over there somewhere.
Sure.
It is somewhat shade tolerant, so it can be found in the densest forests, just kind of cruising, growing up. It hurts when you walk through it or you touch it, and I hate that. And so now this is just like a wildly invasive tree that everyone also loves. So it's like the opposite of the tree of heaven, where you have a tree of heaven growing up and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, this tree sucks. Now that I know about it, it's growing everywhere," and all these things. People are like, "Oh, this beautiful holly. It's a nice evergreen. It's got these, all these different varieties and these beautiful berries."
It's almost like an abusive relationship where they've convinced everyone that they're a great guy.
Yeah, and they aren't. Yeah. I do not like holly. I do not like it with a cat. I do not like it in a hat.
Sure.
English holly.
Have you tried it in a box?
I have, and I also don't like it.
Okay, fair enough.
It has no mocks.
I don't even know what mox is.
Yeah, it's short for moxie, which means like spunk.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah, ask Dr. Seuss about it. He's all about it. No, I don't like it, Alex. It is an invasive tree. I don't think it should be planted. If you find it in your yard, it's because it is an invasive tree and it will grow. And they're very hard to get rid of. They look leggy as hell when they get older.
Leggy.
Yeah, leggy means that it grows out and gets kind of too long, and the needles or the in this case the leaves in the interior die away.
Oh, sure.
So it kind of has these long twiggy branches that come out and then just have leaves way at the very tip.
Ugly.
So it just looks like there's a bunch of like spindles kind of hanging down from the middle.
Gross.
And I think they look awful. They're super pokey and uncomfortable. And I just do not think that there is any really good spot for them around here.
Okay.
They grow too well. They should not be in any like farmland orchard area because people would be growing them up for like cut flowers. Like there's an entire like tracts of land covered in holly out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's gone feral, so it's just like growing everywhere in the forest now.
I'm like, what is the point, You
would just sell it. You sell it for wreath making during the holidays. It's the cut flower industry.
You're talking okay.
Yeah. So I do not like this tree. I'm giving it a 1.5.
Oh my god!
It can absolutely go to hell. If it's anywhere else,
it can't go fuck itself, right?
It can't. No, yeah, it's just not a tree that I like, and I don't think there's any good reason for it.
Great, 1.5 is a hell of a stance.
Yeah, and the only reason I give it like that is because it's a tree, so I'm gonna be like, okay, fine, you get 1 point for a tree.
It exists as a plant.
Yeah, and you get 0.5 because I don't know, it does look nice every now and then. It's like blackberries.
Yes.
For 2 weeks in July, Yes.
Oh my God, yeah.
Every other time, please leave.
Wouldn't it be great if blackberries were, what is that called? Were they perennial?
Oh, yeah. That would be nice, but that would still be the worst because you wouldn't know where they're at all the time.
Oh, true. They spring up out of nowhere in the middle of your living room.
Oh my God.
1.5 Golden Cones of Honor for the English holly. Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, considering that my initial thoughts on this tree were actually for ivy.
That's right.
I have to pivot a little bit.
Oh yeah. I appreciate that you make a distinction. You're like, what do I think of this tree in the first 30 seconds? Whatever you initially had your thought of, and that's it. Very few times I think I've been able to change your mind halfway through.
No, you've gotten there a few times. So the holly, I'll be honest, I have a soft spot for the holly because as a boy, I just adored Christmas time. Mm-hmm. I loved the whole aesthetic of it. It's like, why is everything look so cozy and nice?
Yeah. Okay.
And holly was a big part of that. I have a distinct memory. This is skewed slightly negative. Of we went to pick up a wreath that we bought from the Boy Scouts or whoever, whomever. And I went to pick it up, and my parents tried to stop. Because they knew.
Yeah.
And I poked the fuck out of my hand, and I am sure I cried and wailed against Mummy's breast. And so that sucked. But my favorite Christmas book involved holly.
Oh.
It's like this family who went out into the middle of the woods to find a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And there was like holly on the edges, as a frame on each page.
Yes. Yeah, it's so classic, isn't it?
It's from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
It is it's the Coca-Cola of trees.
It's true.
It's
for the
perfect.
Holidays, certainly. Yeah.
However, from a practical standpoint, I actually want to equate it to Chris Pratt. And here's why.
Whoa, okay.
Actor Chris Pratt.
Oh, I don't know where this is going to go.
I really enjoyed his performance in Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Played Andy Dwyer.
Very good.
Very perfect for that role. Extremely funny.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened, but Hollywood decided that Chris Pratt was going to be in every single movie and TV show and voice act every character to ever exist from that point on. Chris Pratt is invasive.
Oh, God.
And I may have liked him at one point, but holy shit, am I sick of his fucking face and his voice.
Just to be clear, we're talking about the English holly still, everyone.
Yes. So I kind of see the English holly in that way. Like I used to love it, and then it's just
wow. Now it's just
too
overdone.
Much. Yeah. I tried to grab Chris Pratt one time, and he poked my hand.
Yeah, well, it was actually his bodyguard who was poking him. Like, don't touch Chris Pratt
with a stun gun. So holly, I don't know. I'm not going as low as you, my friend.
Wow.
But I'm going to go 4.9.
4.9?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Just under the 5 mark.
That's gracious.
So it's definitely negative.
Ugh.
But it's not, it ain't no 1.5.
Yeah, some trees just ain't worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've covered almost all of them.
They're fun to talk about.
Yeah, I got more.
Casey, it's time for a completely arbitrary AMA. If you've got a question for the podcast, support the podcast, become a Treemium member today or tomorrow, but soon, please, at arbitrarypod.supercast.com. And this week we got one from Krista.
What's up, Krista?
Hiya, Krista. Krista says, in the Russian olive episode, you mentioned autumn olives, which I don't recall, as being a non-invasive ornamental. Can you explain the relative risks of ornamental trees escaping cultivation?
Ooh.
I'm assuming that means like getting let out of the compound and like running rampant. Okay.
Yeah.
Under what conditions should someone feel safe planting non-native ornamentals, and when is it risky? This is a really interesting question, Casey.
Yeah, that is really good.
Because I've never really considered, like, you put one tree there.
Yeah.
What are the chances of it just like seeding in and going for it?
Well, that's a very good question. So a lot of the things, firstly, most of the stuff that would become invasive has kind of already become invasive. because we brought it over a long time ago from like places back when we were like really hunting for new plants.
Oh, so it's rare. It's rare that we find a new invasive plant.
Yeah, exactly. Because we've also like put different things in place to make sure that if it's invasive in one place, we don't want it over here. So please don't bring it.
So we don't sell it in the nurseries.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's changed a little bit since the heyday of, who knows? There's no regulations. We're just going to do whatever we want. And right now, the easiest way to know is to just give it a Google and see, like, hey, is this invasive somewhere else that has a similar climate? That's what's really important. And it's not a one-to-one. For instance, there are many trees that grow here in Portland very well, but are not invasive elsewhere that have similar climates or are super invasive in, let's say, New York or something like that.
Interesting.
So the easiest way to tell an invasive species is usually there is a lot of it and it grows quickly, produces a lot of seeds, and each one of those seeds is very much viable.
Oh my gosh.
High fecundity rate, meaning it's very fertile.
Say that again. High fecundity.
Fecundity, yeah. Very
Wow.
fecund. Yeah.
That's a fun one.
Isn't that a great one? I
That's
do
great.
like that. I think it's a fun term.
I mean, you say lots of seeds. I immediately think of Tree of Heaven.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I have said that it has grocery bags full of seeds at the end of its limbs.
Huge, like a lot.
It looks like a liver.
It
just
does,
like this
yeah.
big clump.
It's just gigantic, and they all disappear over the course of the wintertime and disperse themselves around.
That's so scary.
Yeah, and each one of those seeds is very likely to germinate.
And you're going to be seeing that shit for years to come.
It's all going to be around forever. Yeah. So they're the worst. So you can find those species very often. So they grow really well, really fast, and they have they're from some other part of the world. So when they move to a new part, they don't have any predators. They don't have any other kind of checks on their growth. Where if it is growing in its native habitat, then there are other insects, there are other diseases, there are other trees, other plants that can kind of keep them in check or at least can compete on the same level.
Yeah.
So out here, it's just not the case. And then, you take even our trees and you move them elsewhere, they're wildly invasive in some places.
I may have used this analogy before, but it kind of reminds me of like Superman. Like on Krypton, Superman's like a normal guy. And then he comes to Earth, and because of the radiation of the sun and the gravity and everything, he's Superman.
Yeah, that's totally it. I think you have, and I think that's perfect.
So you take a plant that does fine where it's native, you put it somewhere it's not native, and it just happens to be like a pro athlete and competes the fuck out of everything.
Exactly. It's just way better.
Yeah.
So there is, those are these traits. And these are broad traits, like you can literally Google traits of invasive species and scientists have said, okay, it has this, it looks like that, and like that. So that's where I get those, a couple points.
Sure.
But the way that you can also tell is if you plant one, does its seed grow in? Do you see it produce a lot of seeds, and do those seeds then start to produce new plants?
Oh.
And a lot of times someone will do this research. So before a nursery person starts to develop a new plant to sell, they will plant it and just see what it does, see how it looks. And in fact, I have a friend who owns a nursery who thinks they may have found a invasive species. They brought a certain oak species over, planted it on their property, and are like, ooh, this is like really growing in through my garden.
Whoa.
So they found, okay, I cannot sell this around here because this will certainly take over. So it's just
did they like
really well.
Rip it out and burn it?
I don't know. Honestly, I didn't get the end of that story, and I kind of was taking a tour with them, and they just noted it as a side note. So I think there's one individual that they have,
interesting,
potentially, but I'm not sure.
Patient zero.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
So that is an instance where people can look and see, but that's really the only way you can tell is just see how it does, and then if it starts to really do too well, that's when you're dealing with something that you need to take out and get out of there.
Interesting.
But usually we don't realize it until years and years later, and often the invasive quality of something is half the reason people like it. Dune grass is a perfect example.
It grows so fast.
Yes, the dune grass and kudzu, these wildly invasive species in the United States.
Bamboo.
They're like, great, this is a perfect opportunity. We're going to plant 10 billion of them over here because they're going to stop the dunes from moving. Then they do a really good job of stabilizing the dunes on the coast, and everyone's like, actually, that's like a really important ecosystem that we're losing, and it's just getting covered in grass.
Yeah.
Let's stop that. And then you can't stop it because it's already super established.
Wow.
Same thing with kudzu. They were like, oh, this is going to be a great vine to help with erosion control. Ivy, erosion control. Erosion control is like the big thing, which is like really dumb because it means that we just like destroyed the land and now it's just eroding away because we took all the native vegetation off. So then we plant in a new vegetation from somewhere else to help manage that, and it has nothing to compete with, so it gets just completely out of hand.
It feels like a very like human-based solution to something.
Yeah, it is. It's like just don't even look at the native systems and see how that's working. That's not important. So yeah, it's always these weird things that historically we're like, oh, plant a eucalyptus tree down here, it's going to be great, and now it's it did really great.
Yeah.
So I think that the best way to do it, go get a new plant and plant it. If you're buying it at a nursery, it's probably not invasive already.
Sure.
Give it a quick Google because some less than savory places will certainly plant and still sell it. Like English laurel is really invasive, but you can still buy that at different nurseries around Portland.
Interesting. They just don't care.
They just don't care. There's no regulations and people want it, so they'll sell it.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. It sucks, but I guess that's our life. We have to deal with that until we can have more strict regulation because we do not have a society that takes accountability for the greater good. They will destroy if it makes them more money most of the time.
True, Casey. Well, on that note, thanks, Krista.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hey, and if you've got a question for us, like I said, become a Treemium member and support the podcast at Arbortrary pod, ARBORTRARY pod.supercast.com. There's a couple different options. And, of course, the crown jewel of the Treemium membership is the Cone of the Month Club.
Sure is.
The Cone Club, as we've rebranded it.
Yeah, it's a whole new experience now.
Yeah, we got an app. That would be fun.
Yeah, I think you can download the Supercast app. I think they have one, right?
Sure. Yeah. But it's a great way to support the podcast. And every month we get an artist to illustrate a cone or a flower or a leaf from a specific species. And then we make it into a sticker here in Portland at Sticker Ninja. Mm-hmm. And then we put them in envelopes and we send them off to you.
Yeah. And they're like incredible, to be clear.
They are great.
Beautiful.
It's probably, besides the show itself, it's probably the thing I think is like I'm most proud of about Completely Arbitrary is the Cone Club.
Excellent.
It's just such a wonderful thing, and we would love for you to be a part of it.
Seriously. Yeah.
Arbitrarypod.supercast.com.
Go sign on up.
Casey Clapp.
Alex Crowson, we did it again.
It was a fun one.
Yeah. Are you ready for next week?
Oh, I'm ready. Weird sex, baby. Bring it on.
This is weird sex. We're going to be talking about a species of maple tree. It's fairly unknown, but I'm excited to talk about it.
Oh, exciting.
Mm-hmm. It's known if you're around there. But if you're not, it's kind of like our vine maple over here.
Uh-huh.
If you're around here, everyone's like, yeah, vine maple. If you're not from around here, everyone's like, vine maple?
Vine maple?
What does that even mean?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm excited. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see you then, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Completely Arbitrary. Goodbye.
Au revoir.
Completely Arbitrary is produced by Alex Crowson and Casey Clapp. Our artwork is by Jillian Barthold, and our music is by Aves and the Mini Vandals. If you want to support this podcast and become a Treemium member, head over to arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Thanks for listening.